Starting us right at number 10, we have the Otterbein Cemetery. It was during the 1840s that James Henry was faced with a dilemma. He had been courting two women, Rachel Hodge and Mary Angle. He couldn't decide which one to marry until one day, while going home, Henry ended up falling asleep on the horse he was riding on. The horse would then stop in front of Mary's house. James saw this as a sign and married Mary shortly after. As a wedding gift, James gave Mary the horse that led him there. Their love was so strong, but short-lived, when Mary died in 1845. She was then buried in Otterbein Cemetery, and as fate would have it, Henry would go back and court the other girl, Rachel. But shortly after their new marriage, people began noticing a strange outline of a bloody horseshoe on his late wife's tombstone. James took this as Mary's objection to the new marriage. And perhaps this was true, because days after, strange sounds and sightings were reported in the cemetery. James Henry would be found in his barn, dead, with a mark of a horseshoe visibly on his forehead. Creeping at our number 9 spot, we have Satan's Hollow. Beyond the woods, in a quiet blue ash community, some say exists a portal to hell named Satan's Hollow. Being part of an old sewage system, the tunnels are said to be haunted by a shadow man and other angry spirits. Supernatural markings are seen all over the tunnel walls. Deep inside the tunnels are a supposed altar room where they would commit violent rituals, including sacrificing animals and even humans. Over the years, several ghost hunters and paranormal investigators have visited this site, claiming to have communicated with spirits. Coming in at number 8, we have Athens Asylum. This mental asylum stood from 1874 up until 1993. However, some pretty scary stuff occurred within these walls. Patients were mistreated, physically abused, not fed, strapped to their beds, and even lobotomized, which caused many patients to suffer from life-changing side effects and disabilities. One particular patient named Margaret Schilling went missing in 1979 for 42 days. Her corpse would be later found in an abandoned area in the hospital. The odd thing was that her body was found naked, with her clothes folded neatly beside her, and then her body began rotting so bad that it left a permanent stain behind that could still be seen to this day. In attempts to hide the stain, workers found it impossible to clean up the imprint, and now it's said that the abused patients of this asylum still haunt the building, including the spirit of Margaret. At our number 7 spot, we have the Bloody Bridge. In the 1850s, a bridge that crosses the Miami-Erie Canal was the site of a horrific murder. The story begins with a couple named Bill Jones and Minnie Warren. They started off head over heels over one another, so it was a big surprise when Minnie ended the relationship all of a sudden. Bill was devastated. Meanwhile, the girl seemed to have moved on pretty quickly and began dating a man by the name of Jack Billings instead, and Bill would become a rage-fueled person with full intent to plot his revenge. So on one cold night in 1852, he waited near the bridge that crossed the canal. When the new couple was walking over the bridge, he jumped out of nowhere, slicing Jack's head clean off using an axe, and startled Minnie, which made her fall from the bridge, drowning soon after. This would cause many locals to name it the Bloody Bridge. At our number 6 spot, we have the Loveland Frogmen. This is not so much a scary urban legend, but rather weird, so I couldn't ignore it. The Loveland Frogmen are 4 feet bipedal frogs with a leathery skin and webbed feet. I know, it sounds super silly, but the people who actually encountered the Loveland Frogmen didn't find them funny by any means. Instead, they would shoot farmers, businessmen, and even policemen on sight. One report even said a policeman shot and killed one. Everyone's description of the creature was the same, except the height, making many to believe that there are more than one frogman out there. In the hump of our list, we have the melonheads. In the suburbs of Michigan, Ohio, locals fear of humanoids called melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. The legend goes that a doctor named Crow and his wife lived in the woods of Ohio. In a nearby orphanage, he convinced them to kidnap and then conduct experiments on a group of orphan children suffering from hydrocephalus, a condition that caused the kid's head to swell to 3 times the normal size. The tests were both malicious and an ill-fated attempt to save them. These experiments would cause even more swelling and give them an appearance of a melon head. After days of torture, the kids would decide to kill Dr. Crow, and it's said that these kids still survive off the nearby land, only emerging at nights. Taking our number 4 spot, we have the Defiance Werewolf. In the summer of 1972, the people of Defiance, Ohio were claiming that they were being terrorized by a lone werewolf. The sightings of this werewolf would be typically at nights nearby the railroad tracks. The beast was reported to be 7 to 9 feet tall, very hairy, and wielding a club. It said that 2 men were working on the tracks at night One of the two men, Ted Davis, would report to police that he was attacked by a half-man, half-dog creature. Luckily for locals, after the summer, the beast almost seemed to vanish out of existence. But the story still lingers, and perhaps a werewolf is still out there, hiding. All the way at number 3, we have the Gore Orphanage. In Vermilion, Ohio, there's a story about an orphanage. During the 1800s, a mysterious fire broke out in a building, trapping all inside, leading to at least 50 deaths. The town was horrified by the event and refused to allow a replacement orphanage to be built on the site. Ohio residents wanted nothing more than just to forget about the tragedy and move on. Out of sight, out of mind, or so they thought. The fire itself is said to have left a stain on the area forever, with reports saying that if you try and approach the old orphanage, you'll be met with many children ghosts roaming around the land and running in the forest. The whereabouts of the remains of the orphanage are never clearly shared, and it appears that the location will forever be a mystery. However, there is a road called Gore Orphanage Road in Ohio, so I think it would be best to start there if you want to see some child apparitions. Here at number 2, we have the Cry Baby Bridge. In Salem, Ohio, there is a bridge just off of Egypt Road. Over the years, this bridge has collected many terrifying stories. But the stories are similar in the sense that it involves a mother and a baby child. Sometime in the 1970s, a young couple decided to picnic near the bridge with their baby. They slowly got distracted by the surroundings and by each other that they didn't notice the baby wandering off away from them. It was not until the baby began to cry, the couple realized their mistake and quickly chased after the sound of their baby. They were too late. The baby had fallen into the water and passed away. In an attempt to save the baby, but mostly devastated by her loss, the mother decided to jump into the water and met the same fate as their baby. Now legend has it that if you go to this bridge, you can hear the ghostly cries of a baby coming underneath the bridge. Taking our number 1 spot of our list, we have Helltown, Ohio. Boston Mills, now known as Helltown, was bought out by the US government to make way for the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. However, rumor has it that this town was closed down because of an accident chemical leak, causing citizens to mutate. To this day, the town remains completely abandoned. However, people who visited the area have reported seeing many disfigured, mutated people hiding throughout the area. And to make matters worse, apparently there is a satanic church located at the town center. The area is littered with even more dark legends, including an old abandoned school bus where a series of murders took place in. It is said that if you peek into the windows, you can see the ghosts of the kids or even the killer behind it. At a number 10 spot, we have the Torch Lake Monster. This one is pretty much well known all over Michigan, but for those who don't know, the tale of the Torch Lake Monster dates back to the early 1960s and 70s. Obviously, it takes place in Torch Lake, which is located in North Michigan, and it also is the second largest lake in the state. A fisherman and coach by the name of Dave Foley is credited with spotting the creature first and telling the stories of it since he worked by the lake for a while. Legend goes that the giant creature has a lizard's body, the head of a cat, one brown eye, and one blue eye, along with slimy green skin. The lake is approximately 285 feet deep, which makes what lies underneath much more scary and worrisome. Nighttime is when this creature is said to arise from the depths. At this time, many swimmers and boats go missing, only to wash the shore with no evidence of its demise. At a number 9 spot, we have the Singing Sands of Beat Gris. Located just past Lac La Belle, Michigan, is a beautiful white sandy beach known as Beat Gris. In a direct translation, this means gray beast, and that's because a large gray creature was said to have inhabited the area many years ago, but that's not even the story I'm going to talk about. Local legends claim that the pure white sand of the beach sings by pressing down your palms on it, or it barks when you strike it. The sound is said to be the voice of a Native American maiden who lost her lover when he drowned in the Great Lakes, and now she calls him on shore. The sand is said to lose its magical singing power when it's removed from the beach. Now visitors claim to hear the singing sounds, but as many try to bring the sound back home, they are met with years of unlimited bad luck, which lead many to bring it back to the beach to allow it to sing again. Other than sand that makes sounds, at a number 8 spot with the Belle Isle's Lady in White. In Detroit, Michigan, there's an island called Belle Isle. This 982-acre island is used for picnics, hikes, and home of the only marble lighthouse. Other than that, everything else on this island is shrouded in mystery and up for speculation. Legend of the island follows the story of a chief's daughter and a haunting bridge. The chief was concerned that his daughter's beauty would attract vast amounts of suitors, so to combat this, he made a deal with the snake goddess of the island. island. The chief asked the goddess to protect his daughter. The goddess would agree, but not for nothing. She would ask for the daughter to live out the rest of her days on the island to protect it, never being able to leave it. And to this day, the daughter is said to stay on this island and walk it, with many visitors reporting that she would try to lure them into the forest by telling them that she is looking for someone and just needs help. She supposedly takes her victims to the bridge to drown them, and it's said that if you go on this bridge and honk 3 times, she will appear just before your eyes. At number 7 spot, with the Nain Rouge. It's said that since the city of Detroit was founded in Michigan, bad luck has befallen the area. This is all because of the devilish red imp known as the Nain Rouge had cursed the entire city. Local folklore suggests that the Detroit's founder, Antoine de la Mothe Cadillac, was warned by a fortune teller that he would come face to face with the Nain Rouge and to treat him with the utmost respect and attention. Except this information came straight this ear and right out the other, because when he finally met with this creature, he hit it with his crane and told it to stay out of his way. This is when the angry Nain Rouge cursed the city of Detroit and Cadillac. Shortly after this, Cadillac would lose his fortune and move back to France, but misfortune still occurred in the city. It's said that in all disastrous events that happened in Detroit, the Nain Rouge could be spotted just before all of them. For example, in 1763, 50 British soldiers perished from Native Americans, after which the Nain Rouge could be seen dancing in the aftermath in joy. Then in the surrender of the war in 1812, the Nain was blamed again for its presence. It had also been seen during Detroit's riots of 1967 and 1976's ice storm that caused electricity to go out for days. At a number 6 spot, with the Masonic Temple. Currently standing as the largest Masonic temple in the world, it also stands as one of the most haunted places in all of Michigan. The temple, designed by George D. Mason, is an imposing Gothic structure at the corner of Bagg Street, later Temple Street, and 2nd Avenue across from Cass Park. The temple has over 1,000 rooms, secret stairways, and concealed passages, but unfortunately Mason would go a little too far in this construction, where it would cause him to go bankrupt, eventually losing his wife in the process. His depression slowly kicked in, and then he would jump off the roof of this temple to his death. And to this day, security guards claim to see old George's ghost climbing those steps to the rooftop. Visitors also reported many noises such as doors and windows being slammed shut. They also see moving shadows and experience cold spots all around the area, all while feeling as if they're being watched by something. Right in the hub of our list, we have the Michigan Triangle. Well, guess Michigan has their own version of Bermuda's Devil Triangle, and it contains just as much unexplained phenomena as Bermuda. The triangle is from Manawak, Wisconsin to Ludington to Benton Harbor in Michigan. It was in early spring 1937 when Captain Donner was just managing his freighter ship called the O.S. McFarland through these icy waters. He was so tired, so he decided to go to sleep and asked for one of the crewmates to wake him up when they approached shore. As they did, they noticed his room was locked, so they looked around, but nothing. They then kicked the door down and found that he vanished with no signs whatsoever. Now the triangle claims the lives of many ships and planes, just like Bermuda. People have also cited the O.S. McFarland, but as they try to get a closer look, it disappears into the waters. An odd thing about this place is when that divers go to check the wreckages of ships and planes, they notice that everything is still intact, including the bodies of the deceased and the ship as a whole. This is by far the scariest triangle because there is no way around it other than land. So basically, there's no point in traveling in Michigan's Great Lakes. At our number 4 spot is Hell's Bridge. Back in the early 1900s, an old deranged man named Elias Friss led a group of kids to the bridge and proceeded to murder each and every single one of them, slowly throwing them into the river below. Eventually, he was caught and hung by the townspeople. Before he passed away, he made a confession claiming that he did this because he was possessed by the devil and they told him to do it. To this day, a lot of visitors to the bridge hear the screams and the cries from the children just before they pass away. People have also said that when they get home from this place, they find bruises on their body as if someone was reaching out to grab them or hit them. The worst part is that if you walk on this bridge at night, you can feel hands below you as if they're grabbing you from the river below. And at the end of the bridge, you might encounter Elias as a dark figure with glowing eyes, so you won't miss him in the dead of night. In more lesser known news, apparently you're able to sell your soul to the devil by meeting the devil in the middle of this bridge. I mean, it's called Hell's Bridge. What else did we expect? At our number 3 spot, we have the Dogman. The Dogman is described as a 7-foot tall, amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like creature, and he has the head of a dog with the body and torso of a human. Ever since its original sighting in 1887, many more sightings were spotted all over Michigan. It's primarily spotted in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. Back to its original sighting back in 1887. This is when the Dogman was discovered by 2 lumberjacks who saw this creature in the distance. Things got a little more concerning when in 1937, Robert Forney was attacked by 5 wild dogs, describing that of one of the dogs allegedly stood up like a bipedal and was significantly larger than all the other dogs. This legend got more popular when disc jockey Steve Cook recorded a song called The Legend, which describes the Michigan's Dogman. Although the artist claims it was made for an April Fool's joke, this kickstarted the entire legend and sightings of the Dogman would only rise after after the song was released. At a number 2 spot with Melonhead. Locals' fear of humanoids called the Melonheads. First theorized in the 1970s, Melonheads are said to be completely bald with misshapen bulbous heads, deformed arms and legs, teeth like daggers, and luminous red eyes. Legend goes that Melonheads reside around Felt Mansion, which is home to Dora Felt, who is an American inventor. The Melonheads were said to be the children suffering from hydrocephalus, which causes your head to expand in some cases. They were located at the Junction Insane Asylum near the home, and it's said that they endured months and months of abuse, and that one day they decided to escape and run into the forest of Michigan, where they became animal-like and very feral. Many of these Melonheads are said to be looking for the doctor who failed to care for them in order to take his life. At a number 1 spot, we have Eloy Psychiatric Hospital. Located in Westland, Michigan, it was named after Detroit's postmaster Elois Davik. In 1839, it started as a poorhouse and a farm where the poor, the sick, and the needy would go for shelter and work. As time went on, the poorhouse transitioned into a psychiatric asylum and hospital. The buildings were self-sufficient, even having their own police. They were even one of the first hospitals in the world to use x-rays for diagnosis, so at least one good thing came out of here. At its peak, the place housed over 10,000 patients and over 2,000 staff members. After its closure in 1984, the hospital's abandoned grounds are said to have a few patients still left inside of it. Ghost patients, that is. There have been reports of people finding medical waste and other strange items. Some have reported finding jars containing human body parts, as well as documents outlining strange medical procedures. Coming in at number 10, we have 13 Curves. This is a very dangerous road in Marcellus, New York, named the 13 Curves. Over the past 60 years since its construction, this road claimed the lives of many drivers from unfortunate accidents. None are more notorious than the story of a couple on their wedding day. Drivers claim they see a young woman dressed in a bloody white wedding gown walking along the road looking for her groom. All of the accidents on this road are said to be associated with this one woman, since many of the survivors of these accidents claim that the last thing they saw before crashing was in fact this woman in white. This story is very similar to La Llorona if you guys remember my past videos. That is in the Texas video. How the woman passed away in the first place remains a complete mystery, but some claim that on their wedding night, the couple drove on these winding roads, but on one of the curves, they lost control and ended up in a nearby creek, with both of them passing away. Other drivers claim that they enter into their cars, and many of them become startled and crash when they look in their rearview mirror to see this bloody apparition. At a number 9 spot, we have the Fordham University Spirit Story. Before we begin, scenes from The Exorcist were shot here, so it was probably for good reason since they wanted to shoot a horror film at this university filled with the supernatural. In the summer of 2003, RAs in the place noticed that in one room the beds were propped up rather than lying on the floor. It wasn't until one day an RA awoke from knocking on his door. When he opened it, he saw a Jesuit priest who said he would take care of the mattresses. Except when the RA tried to figure out who the priest was, he discovered that the only Jesuit priest bearing that description had passed away 10 years ago. That's not all the ghosts within this university. It's said that the spirit of a little girl who has been seen in the bathrooms is said to lurk and peek behind the shower curtains. Many other students revealed that they had sleep paralysis when inside the dorms, even though they had no such thing prior. Lastly, other students report being woken up due to the feeling of someone grabbing their neck and tugging their legs as if someone wants to drag them. At a number 8 spot, we have Rochester's White Lady. There's a White Lady scary urban legend in almost all cultures, so I had to mention one in New York as well. In Eastman Durham Park, visitors claim to see a crying woman asking where her daughter is. The story goes that in the early 1800s, a woman named Elisa lived in the area with her farmer husband. After a seemingly good start to their new home in Rochester, tragedy struck when Elisa's daughter suddenly disappeared. The story of her disappearance varies, but the most popular one is that the daughter asked Elisa if she can walk to the lake, but she never ended up returning. Regardless of what version you believe, the result is the same. People see the White Lady roam the perimeters of the lake, constantly wailing and asking for the location of her daughter. People claim that she is more aggressive towards men, but appears as more heartfelt and sorrowful for women. This could be because women are more likely to assist her in finding her daughter, but much of it is unknown. At a number 7 spot, we have the White Horse Tavern. This tavern was established all the way back in 1673, making it America's oldest tavern, as you can see from the sign in the front of the building. During the 18th century, the owner of the bar was reported to be a pirate and rum smuggler, and when the British authorities were hunting for him, he hid out in this tavern during the Revolutionary War and brought in many other soldiers with him, where a lot of them would pass away in that tavern. The most activity in the tavern is said to be located on the 2nd floor in the master bedroom. Story goes that a young girl passed away from smallpox in that room, and many guests hear the little girl singing, and some workers claim claim they see a little girl running around with a lemon and lime knife looking to attack unsuspecting victims. And remember that pirate owner I mentioned? Yeah, he would end up murdering someone in that very room, but that's all up for speculation still. Regardless, the world's oldest tavern had to have a few of their own ghost stories. At our number 6 spot, we have the Rolling Hills Asylum. Located in East Bethany, New York, this asylum was originally named the Genesee County Poor Farm. A poorhouse is a place where orphan children, families, the elderly, and where physically and mentally handicapped people go. All the people who passed away at the asylum were buried on the property grounds, which led many people to believe to be haunted throughout the entire area. The favorite entity spotted there is called Roy Crouse. The owner had an encounter with Roy the ghost. One day she went in and a rat went across the room. The rat startled her and then she went to scream and then left the asylum. The next day when she came back, she noticed a rat that startled her was found dead on the stairs with blood oozing out of it. Above that was a bloody handprint, presumably with the blood of the rat. She believes it was Roy helping her as the rat scared her pretty bad. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Curse of 1940. The Curse of 1940, or the Dutton's Curse, was a hex that was believed to cause NHL's New York Rangers not to win a Stanley Cup between 1941 all up until 1993. For all you non-hockey fans, the New York Rangers were very successful in their early years when they took 3 Stanley Cups, 1928, 1933, and 1940. After a 54-year wait, they won another Stanley Cup in 1994, but many fans believe the reason they haven't touched gold in so long is because of this curse. This was because in the 1939-40 season, the mortgage of the Madison Square Garden, which is the place where the Rangers played, was paid off, which led to management to burn the entire mortgage in the bowl of the cup. This led many to believe that the hockey gods put a curse on them. For example, in the 1950 Stanley Cup Finals, the Rangers had to play in the Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto for their home ice, which could be related to the fact that the MSG burned their mortgage, forcing them to play in another city, hence why they didn't win that year. I know sports curses are not scary at all, but for New York Rangers fans, this is the most terrifying thing they heard all year. At our number 4 spot, we have Palmyra Historical Museum. As the name suggests, this museum is located in Palmyra, New York. This building is thought to be over 200 years old and once served as a tavern and a hotel. It is now open to the public as a museum, but there's a reason why this one is on the list. The story goes that 6 days before Christmas 1964, a fire raged a small home which had Ruth Anna Breeden, her husband Paul, and 6 children inside. It was a supposed flash fire which engulfed the entire house quickly. The husband managed to escape, but the mother and her 6 children were found burnt in the basement underneath a mattress. Although the fire didn't happen in the museum per se, it sits on the home's foundation, meaning the basement is the exact same. This is why many guests claim to catch the scent of ash in the basement, because this is where the woman and her children lost their life. In the museum, guests also report toys being flown off shelves and even feeling their hair and clothes being tugged on. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have Vale Cemetery. After being opened in 1857, the historic Vale Cemetery became the largest cemetery in Schenectady, New York. After many years, guests will report some pretty eerie paranormal activity going on inside the cemetery. Many people had come forward, all reporting the same phenomenon, saying that the statues would bleed from their eyes. It's very important to note that all the people that came forward were not related in any sort of way, making all these accounts really genuine. Other people visiting the cemetery also claim that they've seen figures sitting in the trees above the tombstones and even full-blown apparitions of crying ghosts. The cemetery now has a total of 33,000 assigned plots, making it a spiritual hub. At our number 2 spot, we have the ghost ship of the Hudson River. Back when New York was just a small village, reports surfaced of a spooky ship floating on the river. Seen at dusk on foggy days, many say it was the spirit of the Henry Hudson's Half Moon ship. One of the reports came from an anonymous source of the weather dork that they referred to as Samuel. He was spending the day fishing on the shore of the Hudson, but then an odd ship caught his gaze. He claimed the ship was floating on air above the water, but as the ship got closer to him, he found that it had no crew on deck and had 3 empty masts. Regardless of the fact that it was floating, the ship could only be heard when it got closer, and the wood would be creaking as if it was on water when it wasn't. Eventually a storm came and slowly brought the ship back into the river, slowly disappearing into the darkness and the rain. If you listen to this story and get some Flying Dutchman vibes, you're right. All the way at our number 1 spot, we have the Amityville Horror House. It all started with an invitation from a news anchorman in Long Island. All the Warrens knew that there was a tragedy inside of the home, and the owners left after only living at the home for little less than a month. After Ed Warren spoke to the owner of the home, George Lutz, he quickly agreed to have them investigate. George was so horrified by the house that he only left the keys to the house and completely left the area. When the Warrens were in the house, they described feeling a powerful negative energy, calling it, quote, diabolically infested. Ed then entered the basement and felt immediate pressure, which pinned him on the floor. He commanded to Jesus Christ to leave, and it lifted it off of him. This was no regular paranormal case. The Warrens were unaware that 6 people were murdered in that home 7 months ago, where Ronald DeFeo Jr. murdered his entire family in that one night.
Starting off at number 10, the Voodoo Caves. Located in the Beaver Dam Mountains is a pipe known as the Voodoo Caves. According to local lore, practitioners of dark magic performed countless rituals inside the pipe, leaving behind an evil residual energy that curses or takes the lives of those who enter. It's believed if anyone within the cave insults Satan or makes any derogatory remarks about the entity that lurks there, they will find themselves trapped inside by rising water. The malevolent force got the blame for the passing of a worker who went inside the underground pipe to remove a clog when he got pinned down and drowned. Now at number 9, Bear Lake Monster. The urban legend of the Bear Lake Monster goes back to at least 1868, when desert news reporter Joseph C. Rich ran a series about the serpent-like creature. The series quoted many well-known citizens who all claimed they'd seen the monster. However, in 1888, Mr. Rich admitted that he'd made all the stories up. The legend continues, however. Every so often, someone does claim they have seen the Bear Lake creature, which coincidentally resembles the Loch Ness Monster legend in Scotland. Here at number 8, the legend of Lillian Gray. In the middle of Salt Lake City Cemetery sits a gravestone reading Lily E. Gray, June 6, 1881 to November 14, 1958. Accompanied by the very ominous phrase, "Victim of the Beast 666. Lillian remains a mystery, and her headstone forms the source of wild tales of her being a sacrifice to Satan, or that she herself was a Satanist. Some have speculated that she was another innocent woman accused of witchcraft. Another theory, because Utah is clearly full of ominous places, proposes she died on Highway 666, which is also one of the country's most infamously dangerous freeways. Coming in at number 7, Skinwalker Ranch. The Sherman Ranch in Ballard, Utah is better known to locals and paranormal investigators as the Skinwalker Ranch, or the UFO Ranch. The name comes from the alarming number of alleged skinwalker sightings and reports of paranormal and UFO-related phenomena. The 40-acre ranch borders the Indian reservation and has a history of mutilated cattle, spirit orbs, unidentified objects hovering in the sky, and what's been described as a large, red-eyed beast similar to the Native American depictions of skinwalkers, half-human, half-animal monstrosities. Now coming in at number 6, the ghost of Red Lopez. In early 1915, Bingham miners began hearing a voice, supposedly the ghost of Rafael Red Lopez. According to an article in the February 2nd, 1915 edition of the Ogden Daily Standard, Lopez was a miner who shot and took the life of another miner in November 1913. He also reportedly took the life of Bingham's police chief and 2 sheriff deputies in an ambush later that day. A week later, he then reportedly took the lives of 2 other deputies during a manhunt for him that lasted into 1914. But Lopez was never found or heard from again in Utah. It's still one of the state's largest crime mysteries that wasn't closed until 2003. Back in 1915, the report stated that the workers began to be terrorized during the past few days by the shoutings of a gloomy voice in an area of the mine where 2 of the deputies passed away. Halfway at number 5, teen in a tanning bed. The urban legend about the bride cooking herself in a tanning bed circulated all over the country, but it allegedly originated in Utah with a teenage girl. The story begins with a 17-year-old winning a trip to Hawaii, and naturally she wanted to get bronzed before her trip. Though limits exist for how long and how often you can sit in these tanning beds, the girl, however, supposedly found a way around this rule by hopping around town to town to different salons, 4 to be exact, in just one afternoon. She eventually ended up in Utah Valley Regional Medical Center because her internal organs were shutting down and she went blind from cooking herself all day. Now, a reminder, this one is just an urban legend. Now at number 4, the Lady in Purple. Over the years, many people have claimed to have seen a woman dressed in purple who appears angry or unhappy inside the Rio Grande Depot in Salt Lake City. In 2017, Rio Grande Cafe manager Colleen Murphy told KSL-TV she has seen lights come on at night in a locked room at the bottom of a stairwell with nobody seemingly there to turn them on. She also said that she had been locked out of the building on multiple occasions late at night, with no real explanation. Others have told her they've heard singing at night, coming from the woman's bathroom in the depot, even when the building is seemingly empty. As the legend goes, the woman tossed her engagement ring onto the tracks during an argument with her fiancé at the depot. Deciding she had made a mistake, she jumped down to retrieve the ring when she was struck and unfortunately passed away by an oncoming train. Now at number 3, the inmate. Salt Lake Herald-Republican on January 8, 1905 reported a frightening tale from the Salt Lake City jail. 2 women at the jail reported they had seen a ghost there, walking the halls at night. The ghost was a man who wore a slouch hat pulled over his eyes and would peer through the grating in the building. They told the newspaper that the ghost was that of a former inmate who had died there in a gruesome manner. On one particular night, one of the women said that she heard a ghost noise by a door, then walked up and asked if it was indeed the dead inmate. "Ain't you dead?" she asked. By way of reply, the ghost began to prance up and down the narrow hallway, swinging his arms and smiling, laughing, and shaking his head. While they never saw the man the day he died, they told the newspaper they were convinced it was him. Now at number 2, the Devil's Highway, kinda like what we mentioned before. The highway system, originally named Route 666 and nicknamed the Devil's Highway, crossed through an area of the United States known as the Four Corners, the meeting space of Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. All 4 states have reported paranormal experiences while on this stretch of highway. Tales range from hellhounds chasing alongside cars and slashing tires to skinwalkers shifting from animal to man before their very eyes, to an evil shaman who appears in the backseat to steal the driver's soul. Like many roads, Highway 666 also hosts a ghostly hitchhiker, a mysterious young woman in a nightgown walking the road alone. When someone tries to offer her a ride, she vanishes. A popular legend attached to the Devil's Highway is that of a mad trucker, a phantom semi-truck that terrorizes late-night drivers before disappearing. One witness reported her husband's experience. Allegedly, he was driving on Route 666 one night when a semi-truck began heading straight for him down the middle of the highway. He said the truck had to have been going around 130 miles per hour, with sparks and flames flying up from the wheels. He pulled off the road in time to miss what he thought would be a fiery collision, and the beast of a vehicle took off into the night. Now coming in at number 1, the haunted Old Main. Everyone who has passed through the Southern Utah University campus has heard the lore of Virginia Loomis and Old Main, a building on the university's campus. As the legend goes, Virginia Loomis's life was taken in the late 1800s. Her body was discovered on the boulder used to make many of the bricks to construct the Cedar City building in 1898. It's said some of the bricks even contain her blood. Later in life, a janitor was hired at the university. On his first day of work, he was allegedly lighting the old coal furnace in Old Main's basement when something caused the furnace door to slam shut on his arm. He was supposedly burned until he passed away, unable to get free, becoming the human torch that burned Old Main to the ground in 1948. It's said that the ghost of Virginia was seen laughing in the flames, and Virginia was written on the janitor's skull.
At our number 10 spot, we have the Candy Lady. In the early 1900s, children in the rural town of Terrell, Texas started to go missing. Some of the residents blamed it on the Candy Lady. The story says that she would go around leaving candy on children's home windows just before bedtime. As the parents began to fall asleep, it'll encourage children to grab the candy, but as they try to grab it, the lady grabs them and feasts on their sugar-laden blood until there isn't any left. A farmer allegedly found rotten teeth on his farm and later found the body of a boy with his pockets stuffed with candy. Many people believe that Candy Lady is in fact real and went by the name of Clara Crane. Clara Crane was accused of poisoning her husband back in 1895 with poison-laced caramel candies. But that's not all. 5 years before the incident, Crane's 5-year-old daughter passed away from unknown causes, which many believe that she poisoned her daughter as well. At a number 9 spot, we have La Llorona. This legend originates from El Paso, Texas. Almost all Latin cultures know the story of La Llorona, and the people of El Paso are no exception to that. La Llorona directly translates to the weeping woman, which perfectly describes the behavior of this malevolent spirit. She is said to haunt the riverbanks of the Rio Grande, where she is searching for her 2 children whom she had already drowned in that very river. Now there are many iterations of the story, but I'll just mention the most popular one. The legend goes that a lady found her boyfriend with another woman. After a heated argument between the two, the woman was heartbroken and wanted to get revenge, so she took the children and proceeded to drown them in the Rio Grande River in Texas. It's also said that when she was done throwing her children into the river, she went back to her lover's home with a bloody wedding gown, showing her she would do whatever it took to be with him. It's said to be the reason why many children disappear in that very area, and she supposedly takes other children to fill the void she lost. So if you're in the area, beware of a woman weeping in a wedding gown who is sitting by the Rio Grande. At a number 8 spot, El Cucuy. This creature is known as South Texas' official boogeyman. There are many versions of El Cucuy since it already originates in Mexico as well. It's said that this monster kidnaps children who misbehave and takes them back to the mountain where he lives to devour them. He appears appears as a hairless creature with an enormous head that dwarfs his spider-like body. He also has these large red glowing eyes, red ears to hear everything, and razor sharp fangs and claws to accompany that. The origin of El Cucuy goes that a man was suffering with tuberculosis. Desperate to cure himself, he fetched an African witch doctor. The doctor told him to drink a child's blood, but as he did, he started to turn into the monster described. Ever since, he has a never-ending thirst for children's blood. At our number 7, we have the Screaming Bridge. In North Arlington, Texas, 50 years ago, there was a group of teenage girls driving home from a football game. The bridge was designed to only fit one car at a time, and I know, what a dumb bridge, but this was in the past and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. The girls weren't paying attention and went full speed over the bridge until a car with no headlights struck them head on, with all of the girls passing away. Some say when they go near the bridge, they can hear the distant screams sounding like the girls before they passed away. As well, if you go over the bridge and look down at the water below, you can see the tombstones of all the girls with their names and birthdays written on it. At number 6 spot, we have the Goatman's Bridge. Why are there so many haunted bridges? Like, I don't get it. But in Denton County, Texas, lies the Goatman's Bridge, which was built in 1884. This bridge is supposedly haunted by the ghost of the Goat Man. The story goes that a black goat farmer named Oscar Washburn was renowned for quality meat, milk, and cheeses, and then he moved with his family just north of the bridge. Except when he arrived in this area, he was instantly the target of racial hate crime. The racist townfolk came together and burned down the farm with the family inside. They then threw Oscar's body over that very bridge. Now he appears as a half goat, half man humanoid that reeks of decaying flesh. If you knock on the bridge 3 times, it said that you can summon the Goat Man, but now others use this area for rituals and other supernatural activities. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Lady of White Rock Lake. The lake is located in Dallas, Texas, and many visitors claim that they spot a drenched young woman who appears crawling out of the water or asking to fetch a ride. When many people offer her this ride, she disappears out of thin air and leaves a bloody, wet seat mark and a terrified driver. Even though many of the drivers were scared to their core, some decide to go to the address given to them by the girl. When they arrive at the door, they're all met by the same man who tells them that his daughter had gone sailing and never came back. Many people believe the story is inspired by the 1953 book Neiman Marcus, Texas, the story of the Proud Dallas Store, and according to the book, Malloy and his wife are driving home late one night in East Dallas when a young, beautiful blonde girl ghost appears on the road. Her elegant dresses is naturally wet and she seems to be in trouble. She gives them an address on Gaston Avenue and asks them to be taken home, but as they drive, she disappears, leaving only a mark. At our number 4 spot, we have the Lake Worth Monster. You just learned about the Goatman, right? Well, this is basically the Goatman, but of the lake. This monster terrorized the people of the town for years, with many describing the creature as being 7 feet tall, around 300 pounds, long-necked, flop-eared, pot-bellied, covered in white scales and hair. I swear I just described Shaquille O'Neal. The monster was supposedly captured on camera, but you guys be the judge of that one. It looks like a 2-year-old drew on a camera lens on a potato with a crayon and then took this photo. But who knows, it might be real. This beast was inspired by Sally Ann Clark's book, The Lake Worth Monster of Greer Lake, Fort Worth, Texas. In the book, the monster jumped on the hood of someone's car and shook up the car so badly that they got caught in a bad accident. The people described it being a 7 feet tall being covered in scales and fur and resembled a half goat and half man. Pretty scary if you ask me. All the way at our number 3 spot, we have the Donkey Lady. The Donkey Lady of San Antonio, Texas dates all the way back in the late 1800s. The Donkey Lady was once a beautiful woman with children and a husband, but one day in a rage, the husband burned down the house with the children and wife still inside. The children passed away, but however, the wife managed to survive, but suffered greatly from this. Her toes and fingers would be fused together in a hoove-like way, and her face was melted and sagging, inspiring the Donkey Lady name. There's a bridge in South San Antonio named the Old Applewhite Bridge, or the Donkey Lady Bridge. This is the bridge she went to crown after this horrible tragedy. Now it's said if you go to the bridge after midnight and call out the Donkey Lady, she will appear just before you. Some have claimed she had run at people who call out her name, or sometimes just stalks in the forest line waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. At number 2 spot, we have the girl who danced with the devil. The story takes place in the 1970s in San Antonio, Texas, with a young Mexican girl named Rosa. One day the girl wanted to attend a dance at a nearby nightclub named the El Cabrancito. However, the parents were very strict and didn't want her anywhere near the nightclub. Despite their orders, she snuck out of her house and traveled all the way to the nightclub where she could finally have her dance. At the club, Rosa was approached by this very tall, charming, and well-dressed man who asked her permission to dance. When they began dancing, Rosa was terrified when she discovered he had goat hooves instead of feet. When she screamed in terror, people in the club started to chase him out, but as he got close, he vanished out of thin air, leaving a trail of smoke and the smell of sulfur. Devil activity if that wasn't enough. It's said that the area surrounding the nightclub still smells of sulfur to this day. At a number 1 spot with El Muerto. El Muerto, otherwise known as the Headless Horseman of Texas, is a Texas legend that dates all the way back in the mid-1800s. The story goes that two rangers, Creed Taylor and William Bigfoot Wallace, were hunting a criminal known as Vidal along the Mexican border. Vidal had been wreaking havoc all across the state of Texas, so when the ranger caught them, they wanted to set an example. So they did just that and cut his head clean off. They then tied his head to the saddle and sent his horse with the headless body running off into the night. Now the horse continued to explore the region with its headless rider. The tale of El Muerto began to grow after it was reported that both had been seen numerous times and that gunshots had no impact on either of them. Spotting El Muerto was thought to foreshadow bad luck because everyone who claimed to have seen him was struck with a series of bad luck and poor health following it.